This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Hollywood Casino and ESPN Bet want to help you get ready for football season. Download the ESPN Bet app today and explore an action-packed online sportsbook. Then stop in the casino to catch the action in person with a tailgate party on November 17th. Visit HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com to see how you can reserve your package. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Oscar-nominated filmmaker Raoul Peck will attend the Double Exposure Investigative Film Festival in Washington, D.C. tomorrow night to screen his new documentary, Ernest Cole Lost and Found, about the South African photographer who exposed the horrors of apartheid. He joined me to preview the screening as well as reflect on his 2016 masterpiece, I Am Not Your Negro. Hey, Raoul Peck. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
We are talking about your new documentary, Ernest Cole, Lost and Found, because it is playing at the Double Exposure Investigative Film Festival tomorrow at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Center Theater. It was, if local folks trying to remember where that is, that it was formerly the Museum Building, I believe, there on Pennsylvania Avenue. You can see the Capitol right from it. But before we get into it, it's brilliantly made. But why don't you start, since you and I know what it's about, but tell our listeners, who was Ernest Cole?
Ernest Cole is a young South African photographer who escaped the apartheid regime in the 60s and landed in New York. He was 26 and had in his suitcase a lot of his negatives that he carried around for almost 10 years. He started very early, very young. He was 16, 17. And published for the Western world, his first photo book, which was a huge success, and he became very, very well known and respected. And what we would think would be a great beginning of a career became very quickly, within a few years, a sort of dead end for him. He realized, as he wrote in one of his letters, that he didn't want to become a chronicler of misery, because those were the assignment he would get once he was in the U.S.
Right. Sadly experienced a lot of, the similar conditions. He had fled apartheid, South Africa, and then here in the legacy.
Well, at the time, don't forget, it was still the Cold War, and the West was being sold as the free world.
Right.
And arriving here, and don't forget, it was at the times there were very few non-white photographer, and you had maybe Gordon Parks, who was starting and getting some accolades, but beside that, it's not that they didn't exist, but they were just not published.
Right.
And not, nobody was interested in their work. And I think it changes with the civil rights movement, but until that, it was very rare. Magazine did not publish, works from a black photographer, like they didn't, black artists, women artists had a lot of problems to exist in the 60s, 70s.
Exactly.
So, of course, imagine Ernest Cole, a young man from South Africa. And so his experience was very hard. And even though he got, money from the Ford Foundation to go to the South to explore, they wanted a sort of work about, the South from the eyes of a foreign person, which was a very strange experience for him. And as he said, he's in South Africa, he was, afraid to be arrested, but in the South, he was afraid to be killed and shot.
Yeah.
So it from his eyes, it was quite a peculiar experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the phrase "from his eyes," and I love how in the movie, well, two things really. So through through Cole's lens, the photos you show, he says that he had to shoot his photos sort of at eye level while walking, sort of, he quote, "I'm collecting evidence," almost verite undercover in a certain way. But then you, as the director, the amazing Raoul Peck, Oscar-nominated director, I love how you're pushing in on different parts of the image to say, quote, "same incident, different realities." Like you push in to see a young black boy being stopped on the street, and then you zoom to the other side, and there's a white man with his hands in his pockets. And so two different realities to the same incident. Talk about your idea, both his eye level in the shots, but then you, as the director, adding your cool focus.
Yeah. Well, I had to try an experiment as well with his pictures because I didn't want the film to be just a very static, panorama of his work. So, and I've done that in many of my films. It's just a picture is just a picture, but there are many stories within the
Yeah.
picture, and I wanted also to chronicle those stories, and also this is a permanent approach in all my work is also, like Godard say, the here and elsewhere, and growing up in multiple countries like I did, it's always about our reality right now and what's going on elsewhere. And the same within the same photos, there are multiple minds reacting to the same event. And of course, for a filmmaker, that's something very not only dramatic but also exciting to decipher. What are they all thinking about what's going on?
I love that you're dropping Godard quotes on me. Now you came to the right place. I love it. All right, so yeah, so that's you like, analyzing the image and focusing and pulling all the different stories from all parts of the frame. I love it. It's not only is it like a Ken Burns moving across, you are like finding what the stories within it. I love it. But we should tell the listeners like a lot of these photographs were missing for a long time, and like 50 years after his house on Bottage
Yes, almost
in
50 years.
67, like 60,000 negatives of his were found in like a safe in Sweden or something.
Well, for starting from the 70s, he started to travel, trying to find new places, new ways for his work. He had the dream to become like, one of his elders were Cartier-Bresson, the great French photographer who could, travel throughout the world
Yeah,
and photographing everything. But for him, as a black photographer, he just discovered, well, that was not so easy.
yeah, yeah.
So he tried to go to Norwegian, to Sweden. He found friends there. There were a photographer who adopted him. And so he started traveling there. And around 79, that was one of his last trip there. And by that time, he was photographing less. He was a bit, deceived by the whole industry, and we think that he might have brought most of his work there for
Mm,
safe keeping
I
because
got
he didn't trust his future in the U.S. He didn't know, he was homeless at time,
right.
and for a photographer, your work is, the most important thing.
Yeah,
And most observer thought, okay, Ernest Cole is finished. Probably he lost most of his negatives, and nobody really asked where his work was. And then 30, 40 years later, we discover, yeah, that three huge boxes were in a bank vault in Stockholm.
wow.
And that's the start of a new adventure because nobody can tell us, or let's say
Yeah,
nobody wants to tell us
yeah,
where they come from, who put them there,
right.
where, who paid for those, if anybody had anything in a bank before, it's
Yeah,
expensive to keep even a small box.
sure.
So, and that's kind of the more thriller part of the film, even though I don't indulge too long in it, but it
Yeah.
it raised questions.
Oh yeah.
And but the happy ending for me, beside that, at the end of the movie, Mandela is free, but
Yeah.
also that Ernest Cole got all his negatives back, and they are all in South Africa now and protected and being cataloged. and big organization like Magnum is working with them, and it's like somebody said, it's like you're discovering 50 years after the death of the Rolling Stones that they had 20 albums in one
Right.
suitcase, and
This
then
treasure trove of the vault is
actually,
open, and for a filmmaker, that must have been so exciting.
exactly, yeah,
Now Ernest Cole, when did he pass? In 1990, right? I think it was,
yes, yes.
I think it was actually, I think it was
The,
roughly
the
a week.
same week Nelson Mandela came out of prison.
That's what I was
Yes.
gonna say. It was like roughly a week after
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela walked out of prison. So sadly, he didn't get to see Mandela become,
Well,
become
well,
president in
yes, but
'94.
he did ask the hospital to put a TV in his room so that he could
Wow,
watch Mandela coming out of prison. So
that is
that moment he did have
That's
the
so great. And I love
to
the idea that you gave him sort of it says written co-writing credit for him, because a lot of these were his words, and narrated by the great Lakeith Stanfield, who was making Get Out the year that these negatives were being discovered in the safe. That's
yeah.
amazing parallel to me. But talk about why Lakeith was sort of the perfect person to do this.
Well, first of all, you use the word narrate. That's something I'm trying to get
Right,
away
right.
from because it doesn't. That's not what I ask from the actors who work in my film. Is
Yeah,
basically, I want them to be. Once I decide that Ernest Cole is the one telling his own story,
yeah,
I want a voice to be Ernest Cole. I don't want
right,
him to pretend. I don't want him to narrate with a sort of very clean voice and well with a distance to the text. No, I want you to be the text. I want
right.
you, it comes from your belly, from your emotion. So, and Lakeith was, the perfect actor to do that, and I think he understood it right away. And by the way, he confessed to me, he had been doing photography for the last 4 years, so he could really understand the process of what it is to become a photographer, to look through a lens and to make choices, etc. So it was very at point very emotional in the recording room because when he's telling the moment of his death with
Yeah,
his mother presence, we had to stop for 10 minutes to
yeah.
recover because it was really so emotional.
Oh, I bet. And similarly, yes, not a narrator, but bringing to life the voice. Thanks for making that distinction. You did a similar thing with Samuel L. Jackson in I Am Not Your
Exactly.
Negro. Although it was James Baldwin doing an analysis of race in America. MLK, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers. It takes us through everything. I just want to thank you. You blew me away. I mean, you opened my eye. I mean, I'm a white guy that grew up in rural cornfields of Northern Maryland. And when I watched that
Well,
movie.
nobody's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. We're all trying to learn and get better and learn the true history of
Yeah.
the country and everything. And it blew me away. I remember watching it I went out to fly out to cover the Oscars that year. It was the La La Land Moonlight gaff, that whole
Yes.
thing. And, we're putting in our screener DVDs on the plane to binge at the last second on the documentaries and stuff. You, Ava, and by
Yes.
the way, one of you guys should have won over the OJ Made America was great, but it was
Yeah,
episodic. They
no,
changed
yeah,
the rules.
that's my friend Ezra, and we were all
Amazing. Yeah,
happy for
amazing.
him.
Yeah, and you won the BAFTA. But my point is, at a time when critical race theory is under threat now of actually even teaching it, I want you to tell our listeners why revisiting I Am Not Your Negro is going to be a life-changing experience for them. Because it was for me.
Well, it has been for many people in the whole world, whether black, white, yellow, or whatever the color or the ethnic
Mhm.
origin. Baldwin did change their life because
Yeah.
somehow, for the first time, you have this man that is an immensely intellectual who, but at the same time, have gone through experiences that nobody have done before and was able to translate them in words.
Mhm.
And he's such a, he had a way to talk not as a black man or as a black homosexual or a black militant, but he's like an elder that tells you how it is and puts you in front of your responsibility,
Right.
your personal responsibility, but also your collective responsibility.
Hmm.
And by the way, I think Baldwin today, with the last election we went through, is also the best medicine to go through that, what I call a grieving time. And I think it's important that we have people like Baldwin and people like
Yeah.
Ernest Cole as well,
Yeah.
because beyond his own experience and life, he's teaching us something also bigger than each one of us, and this is what it is about.
Absolutely. And in the final seconds, since you mentioned that, I would like to end on sort of the timeliness. I mean, yours is going to be the first interview, first podcast I air since the election that just happened. There's so many ties that I could. I mean, you're a Haitian filmmaker, and
Yes,
and now President-elect Trump made those anti-immigrant rhetorics against the Haitians eating the dogs during all those lies.
yes,
Elon Musk is from South Africa. Look up his family's, history and apartheid and such.
exactly.
But so there's a lot of ties you could tie in. And by the way, more than half the country voted for him. So I'm sure there are people listening to this that voted for him. But I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
and there's a lot of people mourning Kamala's loss as well. So I guess just, yeah, talk about the timeliness of this story. How Ernest Cole Lost and Found is the perfect medicine, as you say, to what just happened this week.
Yes, because it draws a bigger picture about who we are and how the history of the world proceed. Yes, Kamala Harris lost the election, Trump won, and but still the story is not finished.
Hmm.
And by the way, I remember when I was finishing I Am Not Your Negro, Obama became president. And for one moment, I thought, oh, is it changing the film? Do I have to change anything? And then I remember a phrase from Baldwin saying, it's not about who is the next Negro president of this country, but about what country he is the president of.
Mm,
And we are right there. By the way, without even if Trump or Kamala Harris would have won, the profound problem of this country would be still there.
right. The
That's just an
larger,
election
yep.
for 4 years. And of course, many people will suffer from this particular result. But we're not finished. It's the profound, kind of disrupting reality here, the lies, the insults, yes, as an Haitian, not that I, took it, stronger than anybody else, but it's a much more about this man than who we are. So I'm not even going to indulge in that. What I thought peculiar is that people could make joke about that and think it's a Saturday Night Live joke.
Right.
No, you're putting the life of people, in danger. It's not a funny game. And what people don't understand either sometimes in this country is that the repercussion for the rest of the world when smaller dictator, some stupid autocratic regime, they see, oh, well, the great America, the most democratic country, the richest, the more powerful, can have that kind of president. Imagine what they can do. It just opened a whole range of not only a dangerous word, but also ignorance, but also insult, but also, attack to people who are maybe weaker. So it's really, it's not just about America. It's about what's going on in the world today.
The larger picture. Thank you. Yes, and the light and the hope and the truth and the way forward is works like yours that teach us, quote, the total man does not live one experience. We can learn through all of these experiences, including Baldwin in I'm Not Your Negro, and now including Ernest Cole in Ernest Cole Lost and Found. Everyone check it out. It's going to be at the Double Exposure Investigative Film Festival tomorrow at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Center Theater, formerly the museum spot there on Pennsylvania Avenue. So, the inhabitant of Pennsylvania Avenue is changing soon, but you're going to be just down the street, keeping the good fight going. So hats off. Thanks for changing my life with I'm Not Your Negro. And again, by watching this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you to James Baldwin, and thank you to all those men and women that have come before us and led us, their work to continue the fight.
You're one of the greats. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.